be acting as facilitator today. We view this as a community conversation. We don't want it to be formal. And it's an opportunity for you to really express their opinions, their thoughts, share what they want the community to hear, and then for the community residents to ask questions. So first, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Our format is kind of threefold. One, we'll do introductions. Then we will have some specific questions. And third, we'll just have questions from the audience. There's some things we would just like to hit on, but really we want to know you as individuals and how you can feel that you will serve our community. So I am going to start. I introduce myself, Yella Galde, and I live in the north end of Hartford, and I do own property in Windsor, and I've lived in Bloomfield. So I've got all the areas covered. Okay, next.
Okay. Hello, my name is Mariam Khan. I represent right now currently 5th District. I'm running for re-election. The 5th District includes the North End Hartford, Windsor, and a portion of Windsor and a portion of South Windsor. This is my technically 3rd term, but 2nd full term that I'm running for. And I'm also a teacher. I teach special education. I think, do you want to talk more about focus areas or? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Representative Jane Garibay. I share part of Windsor with Miriam and the east side of Windsor Locks that's along the river. I've been in since 2018. I was elected in 2017 and I ran. People ask, well, why did you run? It wasn't something I planned out. And it was because I didn't like some of the things that were going on, and I thought I could make a difference. I'm well connected with my community. So I did, and I won a seat that no one thought I could win. By 5%, I won it. I love what I do. I love working with people. Believe it or not, I love visiting nursing homes. My areas are co-chair of the Aging Committee. I work on commerce, and I'm on the all-famous appropriations. So working with my community and being in touch with them, for me, that's what it's about. Thank you.
Just the candidates, or
No, everyone.
okay.
Well, good afternoon. Michelle Blackburk. For the last 10 plus years, I've served the town of Windsor in varying capacities, Board of Education, Town Council, and currently I am the mayor of Windsor, Connecticut. And like Jane and Miriam have shared, for me it's just about the community. I grew up in Windsor. I've lived there all of my life, except those college years, and really want to give back. My main aim is to ensure that there is a better Windsor for those to come after me. Proud mom of 2 sons, and for me, that's what I want to do, is just ensure that there's a better Windsor and continue to serve my community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. State Representative Joshua Hall. I represent the 7th District, which is the northwest, central, south, all parts of Hartford, really. My full-time job is I am the assistant principal at Windsor High School. One of my students is here right now, Nicola Witt, so good to see him here. I'm on the Appropriations, Finance, and Labor committees. I've been in the legislature since April of 2017. I look forward to our conversation today.
Evening, everyone. My name is Giselle Feliciano. Everyone calls me Gigi for short. I am your Democratic Registrar here in the city of Hartford. Born and raised in Hartford, 3 wonderful children. This will be my 3rd term here, and I'll pass it on to Bo beside me.
My name is Frank Thomas, occupation, high school student. I go to Academy of Aerospace Engineering in Windsor, and I'm a senior.
Hello, my name is Bloomfield. I go to high school, senior year. Thank you.
I'm Current minority leader here, and I'm also running for the state representative district. I am past president of the Windsor Social Club, so I always refer to this as my home. This is my house. I'm looking forward to discussing more in depth what it is I can do for the Caribbean community, the West Indian community, and the folks of Windsor and Windsor lots and more detail.
I'm Deanna Vernal. I'm a professor of history at the University of Connecticut and a member of the West Indian Social Club.
Francine, I live in Windsor, never in Avon, Delphi Corporation.
Hi, I'm Donna Torres Morrison. I live in Windsor, probably for 27 years. I know Jay. And I do most of my community advocacy in Hartford. Good to be here.
Thanks, everyone. So we have our introductions. You want to introduce yourself? Okay, so the first general questions are just to get an idea of who you are, because sometimes that gets lost when we start talking about the particular topics. So, who is your political hero?
So my political hero changes, depending on who's out there. But I have to say, right now, my hero is Kamala Harris. She has just stepped up to the plate, and she has been amazing. So she's just one of many. If you look at her political heroes, again, there's many, but right now, this time, that's what's on my mind.
Sure. So my political heroes are my parents, because they're the ones who encourage me to be engaged and provide as much influence in my community as possible. That's what they did, and so as they were an inspiration to me, and so that's why I do what I do today.
So I have several. I can go down the list. If we're talking high residential, I'll start off with Carter, Clinton, Obama, and of course Harris, Rather, everything turns out well. Within the city of Hartford, Harris, I'm sorry, not Harris, Mike Peters, Francis Sanchez, who was a deputy mayor and mayor for several years. And then I can go on with community activists, Maria Sanchez. We're talking Clorinda Soldevila. We're also talking Mildred Torres. So there's several that I can go on, but those are my political.
Thank you. So Gigi, you'll probably be the first person to answer this question. What have you done to increase voter registration and turnout in your district?
Okay, so the city of Hartford, within my office, we do a lot of registration drives. We go out everywhere to do registration drives. Encouragement to go out in the polls. Let's make this understanding well. Registrar voters' prime priority is to make sure polling locations are open on time. Encourage folks to go use those polling locations when they are open. But basically, it's to protect the right for everyone to vote. Right now, currently, the city of Hartford has about 65,000 registered voters. And regardless of what election it is, this election we're going to see a high turnout. But when it comes to municipal elections and so forth, I believe every town in the state is looking at decreases of people wanting to get involved with politics. So I cannot go out there and force someone. It's basically on the candidates to go ahead and make sure that folks know that they're running, that they go and pull them, that they make the phone calls and so forth. Myself, as a registrar voter, my job is to make sure that they are eligible, that they can go out and vote, and that is my job.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some candidates speak up.
So thank you for that question. And in addition to that, what Gigi said, one of the things that I did this year specifically is work with the registrar office and have them come out to Weaver High School and get our students at Weaver High School who are eligible right now registered to vote. And so that was a huge day for us. That's one of the, I think the first time, and not the first time, but first time in quite some time where the registrar, her office came out to register students. I think we had around 15 to 20 students registered, so that's a first step in the right direction. And that was followed up with the NAACP came out and did a voter registration drive at Weaver High School as well. And so those are some of the things that we did to ensure that we get young people and make sure they understand this powerful right that they have. In addition to that, just talking with everyday people at different organizations, different functions, and asking them that question, like, are you registered to vote? If not, why not? And what can we do to make sure you are? So that's what I've done.
So I've been a member of the League of Women Voters for many, many years, more than 20, and we work towards getting the vote out. But I think that's one of the pluses when you think of how onerous it is to door knock and be talking to people that you may not have met and talking with your constituents. I have called in for absentee ballots to be sent to their homes, encouraging every person to be able to vote in the way that they can, and talking with people about the importance to vote. And I feel that this time, more than ever, people understand how important that vote is. Thank you.
Okay, in the time that I've been in office, any opportunity that we have at events, I know folks from my district, sorry about that, have asked to table, and we've tried to get that. I just want to add, this is actually one of the first things I ever did as a person that got me engaged in my own community. I used to do voter registration drives at my mosque almost 12 years ago. It's one of the first things I ever did to become active, so especially for young people. It's a very quick and easy way to start getting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
No, I didn't know.
I pointed to.
I'm just waiting for you to ask me one question.
No, this is for anyone to answer.
Oh, sure. You want to use my?
Sure, that's why I pointed to you.
Thank you, Mayor Blackburn, for the you asked one question before, who are the heroes, and one of my political heroes is Archbishop Bailey at the First Cathedral. He very often reminds the congregation that you don't vote for the party, you vote for the person. And he reminds people, just about every Sunday, that you look at what a person can do for you and for the community. And so I hold that dear. I've been a Democrat, now a Republican, and now that we're at the West Indian Social Club, I can talk to what I've done in the past and what I plan to look forward, and that we need to get West Indians a lot more involved in the political process. They're there, but there are other things we can do. We also have an issue in the West Indian community that a lot of our young people are not aware of the history of West Indians and what West Indians have done to contribute to society, particularly in Windsor. So we have the program, Dr. Fiona Burnell is part of it. We have a museum coming to this place, and it says that when we're long gone, we need to have our kids and second generation folks know the history and know that we've made many contributions. So with all the contributions that we've made, we need to be empowered someplace and be empowered somewhere where we can make decisions for us. But it's not just today, it's moving forward. What more we can do. As past president, done that. Education is a big part of it, and exposing people to the culture is another big piece. Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for the answers. Moving on. So, as we went around, some of you talked about the committees you are currently on. I'd like to know in the next session, what committees would you like to be on, and how do you think that being on that particular committee would benefit the West Indian community and your constituents? Start. When elected, and get to be on a committee, which would you like to be on?
I am not elected yet, but when I am, whatever committee, one of the best committees I'd love to be on is judiciary. I think that particular committee has a lot to do with how our young people interact with law enforcement, how we handle things like car break-ins, thefts, but more importantly, what does the state of Connecticut and how can we influence where the state is headed as far as legal issues are concerned.
I'm currently on operations, community finance committee, and so I want to remain on operations then, because everything was getting off the money. One of the best things we did, not just such and such for that, was create community investment fund. And that allows both municipalities, nonprofits, others provide for significant amount of money to whatever institution or area that they join. And so we want to make sure that those opportunities get as many as possible. And so for example, we know Main Street specifically and the corridor, large number of West businesses there. And so enhancing streetscapes, facade improvements, all those things could be found in the Community Investment Fund. And so to ensure that those businesses have the opportunity to thrive is essential, and that's one of the things that we're able to do with the Community Investment Fund through the Appropriations Committee, which I sit on. Thank you.
Ditto on appropriations, because when you sit on appropriations, you're on 3 subcommittees. And that's where things get done, and that's where the money gets allotted to the things that are important to us. I would like to stay on aging because I sit on that to protect our small businesses, our startups, our mom and pop shops that get lost when we're talking about business and the large business. So I try to give them voice. And I love the aging committee. When the speaker asked me, would you like to do aging? I was like, okay. And I found that is where the most help, and how that helps. We pass the most transformative policies in 30 years for our aging population, having to do in home care, having to do in nursing homes. But it's not just our elderly, which it does affect mostly people of lower income because they're on Medicaid, right? And they're in these for-profit equity fund businesses. But it's also the workers. There is a large population of West Indian and people of color, Hispanic, that are working not only at the CNA level, but at LPN, RN. And we want to make the working conditions better for them. They shouldn't be the only person on an 8-hour period for 80 residents. It's not good for the residents, and it's not good for our workers. They need to earn more than minimum wage of, what is it now, $15.90? I mean, that's not enough to do anything, maybe food for 6 months, right? So when we're looking at what we're doing in the aging committee, it has to do with the workers too and protections for them, because if they are happy and they are able to support their families and to do, that helps all our people.
Thank you. So I also kind of want to stay on the committees I'm on, pick my colleagues. Yep. And I actually sit on 4 committees. I don't know how that happened, but I'm on all 4, and I really do like them. So I sit on the Aging Committee, I sit on Education, Housing, and Judiciary. And I do hope to stay on all, I think, especially for the district that I represent. All have, importance to the district, and not a lot of people from the, especially Hartford delegations, sit on some of those. So I'm glad that we're kind of dispersed and we hold some space in all of those committees, so I hope to remain on where I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've talked about the committees. So we're going to transition now to some specific questions, specific topics. The first one is economics, which is of great interest to everyone. First question, CBS last week announced plans to lay off workers in Hartford. Those workers could live in any of the communities that you serve. What are your thoughts, or what would you propose regarding maintaining a stable or growing economy in the greater Hartford area as we see companies transition and leave? Anyone?
No, that's fine. So, and I think actually that's a great point, right? And that's something that is critical for our area, but it's also providing that workforce development training that's necessary to allow transition to other opportunities. We know that in certain industries in our state, there are thousands of opening more jobs. And so we have to help everybody understand the possibilities that are out there. Just speaking specifically for what we're trying to do with our young people at Weaver High School is not only provide them with a high school diploma, but also a credential. That means that gives them training to do something in workforce development. And so that's going to be a critical piece. And so for those workers who may be displaced by what CBS has announced, making sure that we're in contact with the Department of Labor and making sure that there are opportunities for those folks to transition to other opportunities, because there are a lot of jobs out there. There are a lot of employers that are in desperate need of workers, and helping them understand what they're currently doing and how that can translate to other opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, I'll add to that. I think one important thing, especially, I look at long-term solutions and short-term. So a long-term thing that I've seen, especially when we see businesses leave, is also that quality of life issues that we have in our district. And so when we invest in programs and we push for programs such as streetscapes to help beautify the neighborhoods and to help fix up our areas, it helps bring more of those businesses and help them stay, and it helps people stay as well. And even investing in housing and education helps the economic status of our district. And so I look at those things on top of obviously what we can do short term, but those other things I think are really key, because it's because of a lot of those divestments that we have kind of got to where we are. So really looking at how do we invest money back into the community to keep people here and to keep businesses here.
I think I'd like to look at what businesses are doing it well and partnering with them. We have in the 60th District Energy Efficiencies for All, which trains young men that have graduated high school but not yet found a path of what to do. And what they do is they partner each young person, male or female, with a business around the state that works in energy efficiency. And they go through classes, they learn how to do those energy efficiency jobs. And not only that, they learn budgeting, they helped a young man get a license, just things to help them succeed. It takes a village, and it takes training in many different ways to help someone succeed. We've seen people that go to college and afterwards stumble because the whole person isn't being looked at. So it's communities like yours that support your youth, etc., which is really, really important, because the education piece and then with the support of the community, we can help them succeed.
Thank you. CBS laying on more folks was trend that was predictable with their stock prices and some of the competition they had that they're facing now in health insurance. Behind failures, loss of jobs, move back, education. We we have to find a way to do more in educating our young people. So we're not graduating young people. We're really doing it. We need to educate our young people from a broad education, as I said, into engineering, into the sciences, in addition to all the field around. And I made this point to say that if a person loses a job in one field, but they have specific skills in other areas, they can apply to other areas. And to take it a step further, I look at our health care in Greater Hartford. We have a large population. If you go to any major hospital, the people who are the physicians come into the room to treat patients, not people like us. So it says something about what we're doing to educate our kids. We need kids to be doctors. We need else. We need to be low-level workers. We need managers and vice presidents as well. So we got to set the bar high, and in my humble opinion, the bar is not set high enough until we educate and uplift people, give them skills that they can take with them, that somebody can't insult them to say, you are not qualified for. When you have that paper, you've done it the right way, that's what we need to do. If we want to empower our community, we need to get back into the basics of education and have our young kids graduating with degrees that they can use. I'd love to be in a hospital sometime, visiting a person, and see the doctor coming looking like me, instead of somebody from another country or somewhere else. No problems with that, but I think we can do a better job.
Okay, so we started talking. You're not a candidate?
I'm not. I'm not a candidate.
But it's really important.
It is.
No, I think the question that you asked, Arlene, is really, really important. I think all of the candidates, the responses, for me, kind of tied together in looking at how communities come together with the education, with working directly with schools, but also coming back to job centers. So as we talk about economic development, definitely hoping that as we continue to move forward and whatever is going to come out of this next election, just thinking about how are we preparing the community holistically through job centers, through different places like that. So if a CVS does shut down, there is something to fall back on, and just making sure that they are robust enough, that there are different tracks. So if I am looking to become a medical tech and then keep moving up from there, I can do that through a job center. That was all, ma'am.
Thank you. When I asked the question, I was really trying to point out that what happens in Hartford impacts the surrounding towns. Because I was at a meeting last week and a lady said, I don't live in Hartford, I'm not going to live in Hartford. My sister-in-law doesn't live in Hartford. She's not going to live in Hartford, but she works in Hartford and she takes the money out. And she won't come back to Hartford for after-work activities. So I was trying to, in a nice way, say that what happens in Hartford impacts the surrounding towns. But education, yesterday, the Current reported that for the first time ever in the state, that 55% of the students are special needs, whether it's English as a second language, mental health, etc. It has never been upside down before in the state. So you can talk about education and understanding that the student population that we are educating is now very different than maybe 10, 15 years ago. What are some of the things that you think we need to start considering since the needs are very different? How can our education model change to address the needs of the students that are in the schools? And I know we talked about certification programs, etc., but do the students even have the skills initially to go into the certification programs? I know that was an option. So understanding that the student population is very different what are some of the things that at a state level that could be considered? And I know we have quite a few educators in the room. And Gigi, you're in the school, so you might want to chime in, even though it doesn't, you know.
Parent, grandparent.
You want to start off?
I'll let the perspective, but I'll just piggyback as a mother of a child with special needs. It took me from the first day of kindergarten to the 7th grade to actually get her a proper IEP. And getting back to education, not everyone is set up for college. So there is a training component that needs to take place for all the children. The other thing is that's really strong to me as a parent and a grandparent. You're correct. A lot of our children are being labeled. But also, we were told if we ship our children to other schools, they'll learn better because of who they sat next to. And we lost communities within that. So I'm going to leave it up to the folks that actually take place of it. But me as a grandmother, as a parent who have dealt with it, I have a granddaughter now who I have to deal with autism, which is one of the biggest labels that are currently facing our children nowadays, and they're all different spectrums, and I completely understand that. But when I see my own daughter struggling the way I did 20 years ago, and it's still the same old, something has to give. So that's just me as a, not as a candidate, just me as a person. Hartford is my city, my town, born and raised, and when I see young men like this, I really want to see them move up, become CEOs, become, even if it's a manager at McDonald's, whatever it may be, but see success. So I know that everyone here works very hard to make that happen. And I know you, especially knowing that you come from the union, from the teachers and so forth, which I have a lot of family members who are paras, who are teachers. They're tired because they're not being heard either. So we got to give and take. But that's just me as a personal, as a parent, as a grandparent, and as a Hartford resident. So I'll leave it up to them.
Yeah, so that's the truth, right? And so that's one of the things that we have to face. That's a regular challenge. The story that was in the Hartford Current last week is just heartbreaking, and it's serious challenges that we face from understaffing, the resources. What was mentioned also in that article that $21,000 per student in Hartford, $21,000 per student in Avon. Guess what? The needs are different, and so how do we adjust for that and providing the right sizing those resources to ensure that the students here in Hartford and in Greater Hartford get the best quality education possible. And that's our charge, right? At the end of the day, as legislators, as people who sit down in these important positions, is making sure that the future is better for our children than it was for us, right? And so moving that forward, and it starts with an education. And so that's why this past year, we thought just about that, like how are we going to transform the future of our students? And one way in which we're trying to do that is provide them with additional opportunities, right? It's not that we don't want all students to go to college, right? It's not that. It's that we want all students to have the opportunity to go to college. If they choose to go and do something else with their life, that is up to them, but we don't want the fact that they didn't do well or they're not competent to stop them from going to college. And so we're creating these opportunities to incentivize students to first think about their future. And part of that is like, all right, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? Social media and just COVID and being at home has had a detrimental impact on our students' mental health and who they see themselves as people in this world. And so we're trying to change that, we're trying to modify that, and it's going to be up to us as state legislators to really think about how we can do that from a policy perspective, but at the end of the day, it's schools with adults in them that have to make sure that we provide opportunity for students each and every day. Thank you.
So I like what you said about expectations. I know when I was elected to the board in the year 2000, and when we looked at our AP classes, only 3% were kids of color, and our population is more than that, even back then, right? At the time, we had our superintendent, Betty Fieser, and we made it our goal to increase that. When she left some years later, it was at 51% kids of color. And they were taking the exam and they were passing, like you said, Josh. It was giving them the opportunity to be able to do, because that breaks my heart. And that I believe that every community is different and has different needs, and how do we meet those needs? A city has a different needs than a small town. They may be similar, but it is. But that not having high expectations of all our kids and giving them the road to what they want to do, and that they can do anything that they want to do, I think is very important.
Okay. You know I can talk about education for hours.
Right.
So, okay. I'll take less than 10 minutes. You know, I'm just going to add on to what was already said. I think there are a lot of reasons why we are where we are. Resources is a big, big part of it. I worked in Hartford Public Schools myself and as a special educator, so creating IEPs and working closely with students that are not reading. And that's one of our biggest challenges in Hartford, especially when you work at the high school level, because there's only so much you can teach them if they have not learned what they should have until they got to you. So it's very heartbreaking in PPTs to sit and listen to students say, you can't go and get a driving license because I can't read the test. But they can understand it, but they can't read it. And because of the resources that we do have, the shortage, in all of the ways, we're not even able to meet all the needs of what's there. And so equitable resources is definitely a big, big area that I push for education. This is why I really want to remain on the education committee, you know, especially for our district. Before I was a state representative, I had the honor of being on the Board of Education in Windsor, which I'm really grateful for because I was able to see how those resources, once they come down, are actually allocated. And in Windsor, we were fortunate enough that we were able to apply a lot of that to have good reading intervention programs. But with Hartford, with cities like Hartford, and Hartford's not the only one, it's all the big cities in Connecticut especially have this problem in that their tax revenue is not as high, right? And so they don't have as much money to invest on their own. And so then the state has a responsibility, in my opinion, to pick up some of that responsibility, and because a lot of the property that we have is taxable. And so just in terms of resources, I think it's a bigger problem than just Hartford. It's a problem that all the cities, unfortunately, in Connecticut are struggling with. But then also, once we get that money, how is that going to be allocated? So making sure that we're responsible with how we put that money, putting it where the most success is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody has made some pretty good points. I am a pragmatist, and I have a belief there are some basic tenets that we have to maintain if we want to live in our community. The first piece in raising young folks, we'll talk about specifically young black men. We have to, at a pretty young age, stop telling these young men that they will not succeed or that they are less than. That's the first place. Secondly, the nuclear family is almost disappearing, and so a lot of our young folks aren't guided in the sense that being home, and while they're home, being taught and ordered to sit and take time, besides playing sports, reading, and doing homework. We have a lot of that's missing, and so our young kids, some of them are misguided. And now staying in the whole realm of education, a young family, 2 kids in the poorest section of India, compared to 2 kids who are on the lower socioeconomic ladder in the United States, having this one group having far less funds and the other in the U.S. having a lot more. Most times, those 2 young kids in India do far better academically than the kids here. So something is missing. Something in the formula we are using is missing, and we need to fix that. There was an article in the Hartford Forum recently about the Latino population in Hartford moving their kids out of the public schools and sending them to places like Craig, because there's a perception that it's better there. I'm not an educator, I don't have all the facts, and when I don't have the facts, I do my research. Great things are happening in the area of education, but I think we can do more. We can do a lot more. And there's a Big Brothers, if you can volunteer in your community, where we have young people. Young girls are doing better than a young boy. That's a fact. If a male figure is not in the home, volunteer if you can. And take the time to say, young man, you're home now. Maybe mom can't handle it, but young black man, if you don't do better, you're going to end up in our correction system. And so it takes a family and a village to raise kids, but I think we can do a lot more in our education system in this country.
So we heard about funding, we heard about opportunities other than providing other opportunities other than just the standard curriculum, expectations. That was a lot. Can you comment on it? So that was quite a bit. Regionalism. Do you, especially your comments, talk about the funding, some cities are underfunded, and so that's why other places do better. Right now in the world, in our communities, due to weather, we're having climate change. That impacts everyone, and I want to know your thoughts on shared resources, and how do you believe in shared resources across communities? Because that has been something that has gone back and forth. Some people believe that communities should share resources and should be spread. Some people don't. But as our future goes, and we know that some communities cannot stand on their own, and as for education, as for the weather changing, we've had floods, we've had all kinds of things happen. Your thoughts on how can we deal with some of those issues? What are your thoughts? Who wants to go first?
Okay, so I'm not against shared resources. I think my concerns would only be that if that's something that we want to look at, then we have to make sure that it's done very carefully and equitably. What I would not want is, let's just say you have some sort of a regionalized school approach, and then you have the good part of the region, and then you have the other part of the region, which is what's even happened within cities and towns. And so really focusing on how the needs align of certain regions, because a school especially it's one of the places that students are spending most of their time. And so I would really want to make sure that we do that equitably in terms of what are the needs for the district, and how we would really target that. But in terms of exploring that option, I would be open to exploring it. Only because I think, especially where we are going, if you look at certain we already have some regionalized school districts in Connecticut with smaller towns that don't have enough students for school, so they do have regionalized school districts. But in terms of here, like in Windsor, Hartford, Bloomfield areas, We're very different where we have our own, everybody, goes to their own town. So I'd be open, and even there are ways to do it in a more, like a part-time regionalized way, so you share some resources, but you still have your own, because there's also, the pride of, Windsor has their teams, and everybody has their own sports teams, so what happens, they change. So some kind of also like a second step option, like a half step option of some shared resources, especially for specialties, when we're talking about like kids with special needs and students that have other needs. So let's just say school psychologists, speech pathologists, all these areas are also shortage areas. For those that don't know, a lot of speech pathologists now, people are doing virtual speech pathology in our schools, and they live in other states such as Virginia because we don't have enough in Connecticut. And so if you're doing shared resources, when it comes to some of those, I think that's also an option that we should be exploring.
Can we talk about it broader than just education? How do we include education but also broader?
I think we do share some resources now. I know that Windsor with East Windsor, Windsor Locks, and several others just went on a program for our emergency services together. So we have some of that between our schools. In each town, our schools need to work more, and our towns more with the schools for shared resources for buying oil, etc. And that could also, I do believe that no matter where I go in the United States, or that my children, if they're in 4th grade in Connecticut and I move to Texas, that it should be the same level, the same schooling, and the same quality, no matter where our children go. How we get there, like Miriam, I'm willing to, look into that, and how do we make sure, because what happens in Hartford affects Windsor. What happens in Windsor affects Vernon. Our communities, what's happening to our children, it's all our joy, but also our worry, right? So I'm open to listening to that.
Thank you, and I know you said make it broader, but just as one fact. So we have 169 towns in the state of Connecticut. We have 153 superintendents. So we have superintendents of school districts with 20,000 students, and we have superintendents of school districts with 500 students, and they're getting paid around the same amount of money. That level of resource just being wasted is what's impacting places like Hartford and the greater Hartford area. But let's look at the fire department, right? And so if you look at Blue Hills Avenue, there's a new firehouse on Blue Hills Avenue about 1,000 feet away from another firehouse on Blue Hills Avenue from Bloomfield to Hartford. Just the resource there alone is just being wasted, right? It's just not necessary. And so when we think about other places in this country, the vast majority of the states in this country have county government. We have city government. And so we used to have counties in the state of Connecticut back in the 60s. We got rid of them. And so now all these resources are separated, being wasted, not being utilized in the best way possible. And I think that's one of the challenges we face, and that's why you see the disparities from city to town, town to city, is because those resources aren't being shared and utilized in the most efficient way. And that's one thing that we need to really reconcile with and get back to, because the health of our community, the health of our neighborhoods really depends on those resources being used in the most efficient way. Thank you.
I'm not a state rep, but I'm going to speak about regionalism and not in the school system. I'm going to speak about the fact that our delegation for the city of Hartford are few compared to the 169 towns. So you have to join all of those forces in order to rely on regionalism becoming a big point. I myself do agree regionalism does need to happen. Hartford holds one, and many of the big towns, Waterbury, New Haven, Bridgeport, holds a lot of the social hubs that are used by other towns, but other towns don't want to take the responsibility of assisting when our delegation goes out there and says, listen, your folks are coming in here, are using our services, but we don't have the compensation to come back and forth. So I think regionalism does need to happen, but it's a long time from here to there because I feel that the delegation has a block when it comes to other communities saying, we can't help you. When I believe our delegation for many years has been saying, listen, we need to make this happen for the state. How can we join the sources, all our resources together? I believe you guys work closely with CROG, and that's one of the topics that's been hitting, I believe, since the last 10 years. So it makes it difficult for them to have that approach if we don't have other delegations joining in to see the services that are needed.
Thank you. Regionalism has, it's an idea that has been around for quite some time. Windsor, and I can speak from the Windsor perspective, from the town council perspective, we've looked at working together for our ambulance services. Because in our town, we knew that our volunteer ambulance service, and we could see from the raw data, that we needed additional resources to pick up the slack at high peak periods. For every effort that we've made, we've also looked at using the police radios, sharing bandwidth on the radios for emergency services. In each instance, the issue always stemmed, the problem stemmed from liabilities for each entity. So if there are 3 different towns that want to get involved with ambulance services, there's the issue of who pays for what, where's the centralized billing, and what are the legalities? Is one town more exposed to liability than the other? And so those things can be overcome, I think, by using the CEOs, the managers of the different towns. They need to come together. And once they make an agreement, then it's up to the municipal governments to say, we buy into this idea or this plan. Until all 3 come together, there's normally a breakdown. But regionalization in some instances will work, in others it's going to take a lot more work.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the floor. We haven't talked about immigration. We haven't talked about healthcare. We haven't talked about housing. We haven't talked about quality of life. But I want the audience to have the opportunity to share their thoughts or ask their questions.
Thank you, Vera. Hello, everyone. I just want to make a comment about education. I agree that there's need for non-traditional studies because not everybody can go to college. One of the things we did in Hartford was, and those 2 young men are testimony to that, we did an after-school program where we taught event planning. And event planning on the surface seems like that's something that's boring and that doesn't fit for everyone. But some of the studies that we did was marketing, customer service, business etiquette, bookkeeping, design, and they were able to get a certificate and then worked for a period of time. So I think we need more funding for some of those non-traditional studies because not everybody can go to college or go to the path that others do. But I also wanted to give a plug for what has happened in Hartford at the Colin Bennett building where Funfara, I think, Senator Funfara had provided funding for both the North and South End for manufacturing. And so Goodwin University is in that building. And I want to make sure that that resource is being shared because it's not just for Hartford, but it's surrounding town. So I think we could do more in sharing those kind of resources. Am I coming?
Question from the floor? I was wondering if we could get a little bit more information about the future direction of the community investment fund, and what sort of are there new priorities on the horizon beyond some of the infrastructure, streetscape, landscape, beautification, and other kinds of things that were mentioned in your answer? Anyone else?
So those areas that you mentioned are the principal areas of the Community Investment Fund, but there are a host of other opportunities, whether it's through workforce development, job training. And so there are a lot of different areas, and it's incumbent upon nonprofits, municipalities to write the proposal and then request the funds. And so that's what that's what it amounts to. And so we, the Black Puerto Rican Caucus, which presented this and proposed this, we wanted to make sure that historically underserved communities such as ours have access to large amounts of money, and that's what this is. A lot of it is for housing and housing development, both for new housing, but also for folks who have limited incomes or fixed incomes, that they have access to resources to maintain and enhance and renovate their homes. And so a lot of that is there, and so it's incumbent upon those nonprofits, municipalities to really think thoughtfully about what types of projects they want in the community and then propose those and apply to the city.
My question is just simple. How do you plan to involve residents in decision making for anything that's going to happen in our town?
I'll just say some of the ways that I try to engage folks. I try to use many, like a town hall, people call them town halls, I usually call them town halls. But some specific topic, whatever's, the hot topic or a topic of concern at that time, hold some sort of a discussion so that folks can come, give their suggestions, and or I can bring what's being discussed, really just making information more accessible and then being able to take that information back as much as I can. And then if there are discussions in the town already, I just try to show up there to engage with people there. But as much as I can, really make the information accessible. I also, I know most of us, we all do a newsletter. So through my newsletter, I also make sure that if there's something coming into that town that I think people should be aware of, I make sure that I put it there. That there's opportunities, any opportunities of engagement are also presented there. So, but any other suggestions on ways to engage folks, I'm always open to.
Maybe each of you can also talk about how people can reach out to you.
I have social media. I think all platforms. We have emails. I check my own emails. We also have an office number that you can call if you need something right away, especially if it's something in the state office. Our constituent engagement coordinators can usually assist you. But I'm pretty good on email. I check my email every night. So if you email me, I will probably get back to you in a day or so. It's probably the best way to get in touch with me, but I'm also on social media if people decide to engage me there.
So for me personally, talking to individuals about their situation, which is important, and that you do have voice. My cell phone is on every publication that I put out. It is directly to me. I answer the phone. Like Miriam, we have our email addresses also, but I'll say we probably both receive, all three of us, 100 emails a day. So for me, a text or a phone call is the fastest way to reach me. And I am happy to meet you at a local coffee shop, on the town green, or wherever you are. Your voice does matter. When we think of this past session, we passed 36 bills in those 2 aging bills. Bills that had not been able to pass for years. And it was the voice of the people that came to our hearings, just like you did in housing, Miriam, right? You might have to come to the Capitol, but it's also on Zoom where you can give your voice. Also writing an email but in your words, not one of these copy and paste from some website, but say, you know, traffic is a real issue in my community and why it's affecting you. And we do reach out, and if for some reason you don't get an answer, reach back out, because again, with so many, but your voice does matter. It's the only way, was the voice of people in communities all over the state that came together to talk about aging situations, which affects me and you, even the younger people, because our state is aging, your parents are aging, and we want safe places, if needed, for medical care for your families to go into. So your voice is important that way, but reach out to your legislator.
Yeah, I would just echo something very similar. I actually bought business cards here today with my personal cell phone number, because just trying to answer our office voicemails I just can't understand the system, so it's better for folks to get in touch with me or text me or call me, and so we can just engage that way. But there are community forums, community events, there are NRZ meetings, there are Block Watch meetings, all these different opportunities to engage and get feedback from residents such as yourself about what we're talking about, what we're thinking about. But we also send out newsletters about proposals that we have before they actually become law, and trying to get that insight from our community about whether or not this is the right direction that we should be heading in. And so those are the different ways.
You guys speak a lot of newsletters, but where are the newsletters on your platform? Like there's websites, or they're in the mail going out?
So if you're a registered voter in my district, then you get my newsletter. And so I'm not sure what district you may live in, but northeast off Main Street. And so you should be getting somebody's. Okay, all right. So you'll get her newsletter. You wouldn't get mine, because mine goes out to my 7th district constituents. And so that's how the system works. Yep.
So the digital newsletter that I'm talking about also, if you're not getting it, you and I can show you out there, but you just this is for any rep, and you can subscribe to people's newsletters even if you don't live in their district. So if you also want to know what Representative Hall is sending out, and me, even if he's not your rep, he's still Hartford rep, so it's still neighborhood news. You go on our site, on the CGA website, and I think it's like the top right side, a box to put your email, and then you automatically get all of our digital newsletters. So again, you can subscribe to anybody. So even if, let's just say, you're really engaged with the education committee, you want to, you go on their website for the education chair, that's an East Hartford rep, but you can subscribe to theirs, but I think you should do that.
Follow-up question, I'm going to give it to you. You mentioned the constituents and also letters from people in the state. Can all of you just talk about how do you weigh, when making a decision, those of your specific constituents versus looking at the whole state? Because sometimes there might be conflict.
Okay, so my situation is different because I'm not the state rep, but I can speak from the Windsor Town Council perspective. I too have business cards, and I like this bright man right here, or I don't know if it's brighter, but we put our regular cell phone numbers on there. So when we get calls, we respond directly to our constituents. The Town of Windsor's website has contact information for every town councilor. I am door knocking in my district, and as I door knock and talk to people, I also provide information to them. Windsor is much more involved in that whatever the issues are, besides the public forum, the social media forums, we have opportunities before the meetings to tell the community exactly what's happening out there and what to expect. And Windsor is a lot more proactive. They show up and they have a lot of interactions. We have a lot of public comment sessions and public information sessions, and we're very involved. I would hope that's the attitude for all over the state, but I know that's not true. But Windsor is different.
Actually, that's a very good question in reference to how we respond to get in touch with us. Because there are a myriad of advocacy groups with all kinds of issues throughout the state, and we get thousands and thousands of emails from people in Greenwich or Waterbury or Danbury about whatever is happening in their specific community. And so what I tell people all the time is that the person or people you should be contacting are your specific state representative or senator, and you need to inundate them because you sending me an issue about a charter school in Danbury is not going to have any impact on me whatsoever. Now, you talking about either Jamoki Achievement First because they're in my community and what's happening there, that's different, right? So now I have to respond because my constituents send their children there, and they're right there in my community. And so it's important that we help people understand how to advocate, right? And I know that's part of what you do each and every day, Violette, is helping people understand how to advocate for themselves and approach it in the right way. Thank you.
So I'll just add to that twofold. One, in terms of contact, I agree, especially, if someone reaches out to me and I'm not their state representative, I will usually refer them to their state representative also out of respect, because that person probably knows that district better and I would not be able to maybe properly answer that question. And in terms of policy decisions, when I think of policy, that's also sometimes can be a conflict, how your district versus the state. I'm very blessed in that I feel that my district is very aligned with my own personal values, and so I haven't had to make those tougher decisions, but I think for some people that often happens where there's a disagreement between what they believe is best for the state versus best for their district. Luckily, I've been fortunate that I've been very well aligned, but usually I lean on my district, right? This is who I represent, and so this is who I'm advocating, especially when it comes to policy. So when I'm looking at housing, education, whatever I'm looking at the 5th district and how that's going to impact us.
Other questions from the floor? No?
Do a time check. 4:24. Ms. Mann, should we continue? I have more questions.
If you could touch up on housing, I think housing is critical, and food security.
You have a question, John?
Those two topics.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John. I'm technically on the Windsor side of town. And this question, it's more so is going to gear towards Mr. Len. All right, so I do agree that, for example, when the fathers of Wade gangs come around the state kind of thing, so there's a lot of kids nowadays that's throwing up gang signs when they shouldn't. So I can understand that, yes, the nuclear family is very important, right? What I guess my beef, per se, is with the Republican Party right now in terms of slight disappointment because they allowed Donald Trump to dominate the party, per se. So right now it's more so seem like it's a Donald Trumpican party, I guess, something like that, right? So my question to you would be, how would you, as a Republican, and not necessarily distance yourself, but make it known that you're actually personally wrong, and your decisions is not going to be like, Donald Trump, if you say jump high, you're going to say you jump, you're going to say how high or something like that, that your decisions are going to be a Republican-based decision and so forth. So basically, that's it. It's not that my votes, by the way, I'm registered independent, so my votes can flow left or it can flow right? So just to that note, and I'll turn it back over to you.
I know you started off with both parts and not the party. I remember.
Thank you. That's a question that's been out there nationally. And while I'm local, I don't have a problem responding to that. First off, Donald Trump is the nominee at the national level for president. That is Donald Trump. I am a counselor in Windsor. But give me a couple seconds to explain why I approach politics from a different perspective. I am the chairman of the Republican Party in Windsor. Part of my responsibility, so to speak, is to bring more diversity into the party. People say about the Republican Party, oh, it's Donald Trump this, and everybody's going to jump, however. I've never done that, and I don't plan to do that. For the first time in Greater Hartford, the chairman of the Republican Party in Bloomfield is a black man. The chairperson of the Republican Party in Hartford is a Puerto Rican woman. That has never happened. That happened because in Connecticut and with the current party chairman, he listens to people like myself, where we say we need a lot more flavor in the meal. And that's a long-term plan. Secondly, my decisions in politics are based on what is best for my constituents. The only person I jump for is Christ. Mortal man means nothing. Politicians come, politicians go. And they wear all different types of dresses. So, to get back to the party, you can't change a party by being outside and arguing about it. What I did is I became involved. And at my level now, I'm able to help direct guidelines and policies that will help bring more of us into the fold. The Republican Party is conservative, but the number of West Indians in particular who are in it, we have a lieutenant governor in Virginia who's going for governor, Jamaican-born, Jamaican-raised Republican. Colin Powell, God rest his soul, Jamaican. So we have a history of being a part of the Republican Party and not being on the fringes. Colin Bennett, one of the people who was very involved with the Jamaican community, the West Indian community, was a Republican. So being Republican is okay. And secondly, about following what other people say, there was a time in Windsor when Windsor had to decide if it wanted to have lights at the football field and artificial turf at the football field. At that time, I said, as a counselor, we should have it. Windsor said no. People in the neighborhood said no. And I said, I'm going to go out on my own. Two of us, myself and a counselor named Paul Broxterman, we went out and lobbied and said, we want to put up lights, we want to put up a third. What that did is then the two Democrats, myself included, were ostracized. An entire team formed together and ran as a slate against the two of us. So that football field that you see at the high school, the lights and the turf, Len Walker did that by going against what people told him to do.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor? While I go to immigration and healthcare.
Sure. So I think my fellow legislators, sorry, Josh, that we know what it takes to do a bill. When you see my name on the ballot, you can only choose one, but first and foremost, I am a Democrat. And in the majority of things, we share the same values. I'm also the independent candidate, and I'm also the Working Families Party candidate. Because it takes with working with all people to get things done, to get a bill passed through the House, then through the Senate, and then to have the governor sign on with over 4,000 to 5,000 bills that are proposed. We might get through, what, 300 or 400? So it takes all of us. And I'll just mention quickly the governor's bill, which he gave to the House to bring out for aging. The last day of session, it was supposed to hit the Senate floor, and I got a text at 7:30 in the morning, and it said, the Senate's not taking that up.
And we're all like, are you kidding me? That's where it went from 4 beds to 2 beds by 2026 in nursing homes. Because imagine sleeping less than a foot away from the other person in your room. So we galvanized. We had a flyer made, we called the AARP, we called, Alzheimer's Association, etc., to get outside the Senate and to lobby them. The other thing we went to was the Black Puerto Rican Caucus, Robin Porter and Minnie Gonzalez, and we said, can you get the Black Puerto Rican Caucus to sign on to this bill, and then to call their colleagues in the Senate to get it passed. 6 o'clock that night, the bill came to the floor, and I think it passed unanimously in the Senate, a bill that they weren't going to call. So it takes everybody to work together to get those things done. So.
I have a quick general one that anyone can answer if you want. This is not so bad, don't worry. All right.
So recently there was a strike at the port. One of the main reasons for the strike was that they're worried about automation, right? There's no way we can stop automation. That's unlikely, it's illogical, it's not gonna happen. And in fact, because they strike, I think actually the companies are probably gonna automate even faster because they put themselves in the line of fire per se. So in the future, I know some of you touched on this already about educating the kids from the ground up and having special programs, but how are we supposed to tackle this kind of automation that's coming down the pipeline? And basically just to ensure that everybody is kind of ready, or the kids are ready for what's coming.
So I think that's a real issue, and we have to prepare our students, our young people, for jobs in artificial intelligence, in technology. There's plenty of jobs out there. We know that there is a shortage. So how do we, that is a good question, how do we prepare them to take those jobs? Because those that want to, like the supermarkets that go to the automated checkout, which I can't stand, by the way, it's always telling you wait for assistance every time you put something through, right? But we have to train our young people to be able to take those higher jobs in technology, artificial intelligence, because it's coming whether we like it or not.
Yeah, so that is one of the challenges that we see in workforce. But once again, with automation, there becomes another industry opens up, right? And making sure that folks are already prepared to go into and enter into that new industry. And some, to their credit, because people and seeing people work is always good, some companies have even pulled back from automation because they are understanding that human interaction, which allowed their business to thrive in the first place, that is going away. And so some companies are on the waffling a little bit, which is actually a good thing, but making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to allow people to transition to other opportunities is critical, and you need to make sure that we're forward thinking enough to know when those things are going to happen.
The only thing I think I will add to that is in terms of, education has kind of always been a way to prepare our young people for what is ahead, and we haven't really changed too much in education. I think that's where we've kind of stayed the same, and I think this is a broader conversation also about reimagining education and really seeing how are we going to prepare young people for a world that's changing so fast that we don't even know what careers they could have in just 10 years. So those are bigger conversations just in education, but it's definitely an area we need to focus.
Thank you. With automation, there are still opportunities for job creation. And by that I mean, I have had the experience of observing automation at its capacity. There is one of the largest distribution points sitting on Kennedy Road in Windsor. I did that tour, and if you want to talk about how quickly goods move through that place, it's unbelievable. So whereas the software and the robots move the packages through, we still need people inside the building to make sure that everything is running smoothly. And after, the offshoot of all of that is we need drivers and hundreds of drivers. So Windsor is always looking for, Amazon is always looking for additional workers. But to agree with everybody else, it's the future and it's not going away. We got to prepare our kids for that.
Hello, my name is Ken Bennett Jr. And Dylan, I have three nice things to say for one question that we got. Dealing with automation and kids today. I have a grandson that's 17 years old, and he was going to the senior prom. He needed like $275 to pay for his tux and his girlfriend's massage and tickets. And I told him about real estate. I deal in real estate. And I said, you can come work for me, and I'll go ahead and pay you so you can earn the money. Dealing with automation, instead of doing that, he said he would get back in contact with me. He sent out a text message to his aunts and cousins and saying, this is Chauncey, I need $50 in order to go to my senior prom. He probably got 400 and something dollars. Thank God for automation, right? Second question, dealing with when he's a Republican, Colin Bennett was a Republican, my father, Ken Bennett Sr., is a Republican in Bloomfield. One of the reasons why I'm telling him, said he wanted to be a Republican because he said somebody needs to be in the room to keep an eye on him. I'll make a statement. Let's go Kamala Harris. Time for a change. And I guess my only question is dealing with real estate, and if you can just talk on some of the projects that's going on currently here at Hartford, especially the North End, what types of funds there are that's out there, that would be appreciated.
And while talking about that, you just talk about housing.
So a couple of the projects that are happening are both along Grand Street. We have Willow Creek and also apartments by Park River, which is Bowles Park in Westbrook Village. And so both of those projects receive money through the Community Investment Fund as well as other bonding to support both home ownership, right, on those spots, but also affordable housing. And so those are two large projects that are happening in the North End. But there are other smaller projects that are happening, whether it's Sterling Street, whether it's Western Street, that are happening as well with other smaller developers with housing. There's one at the corner of Woodland and Albany Avenue across from the Arts Collective, that corner right there with the old mobile gas station. And so that is going to be retail on the first floor, but it's going to be affordable housing on the second and third floor. So that's another opportunity for housing. And so, to your question, how folks can get involved, right? Because yes, selling homes is great, buying homes is great, but I think we need more folks developing properties, knowing and understanding what that's going to mean, and more owner-occupied properties, right? And so it allows folks to have their mortgage paid, right? But also gives them a stake in that community in which they're living. And so we're looking forward to organizations like the Greater Hartford Urban League, Blue Hill Civic Association, who are receiving funds to help support those initiatives. And so that's going to be coming online in the next few months. And so that's going to be announced, reaching out to those folks to get on the developer side, but they're also going to need folks who are realtors to help advertise and support and get people involved. But absolutely.
Just to add to that, in terms of what we need in general, in conversation on housing, I do sit on the housing committee. I'm currently the vice chair, and this past session I did chair the committee for a couple months. And one of the big things that because there's housing includes so much, and we have a lot that we're looking at in the state. One of the things we also really look at that primarily affects a lot in Hartford is out-of-state developers and how to keep them accountable to their properties. And there were some things that even when we were addressing, I was not aware of before I was a state representative, in that a lot of times there was documentation that housing developers, especially from out of state, did not have to put their real name. They could put someone else's name, and so then it's very hard for then a mayor or a town or a city to reach out and find out, hey, you know, like this and this is needs to be addressed when you don't even have the person's actual name and contact information. So that's one of the things that we added into some of our laws this year, but in housing. But a lot of what we look at is really those small little things, those little loopholes that landlords have, that developers have to be able to really affect housing, and especially in Hartford, because that's a big issue here. But in general, you know, definitely housing is a huge, huge concern. Housing committee, I think last year when we did a rent freeze bill, had one of the largest public hearings that building has ever seen. We had to hold them 2 different days, and both were until almost 5 or 6 a.m., believe it or not. And so it's a huge issue, especially post-pandemic. Rents have skyrocketed. People want to buy property. There's not enough property. So the good news is that we are aware, and there are a lot of there's roundtables and other you know, specific task forces dedicated to this issue to really explore what we need. And it is an issue that primarily affects Hartford, which is why you know, housing committee, especially for us to have a seat there, is very important. But just that's my comments.
How many know what a private equity fund is? Okay, it's a group of people that pooled their money together. They've infiltrated our housing, especially in Hartford and the big cities. They've infiltrated our nursing homes. I know nursing homes better, but what they do is they come in, a chain, and they buy 15 nursing homes. Then they buy the building from the nursing home, so now they own that. They buy it real cheap, but then the nursing home business has to pay them an exorbitant rent. Then they own the landscapers, the laundry companies, the food providers, paying themselves all this big money. That's why when you see a nonprofit or a landlord that is invested in what he's doing, they're not siphoning out all the money, because they do that for 5 to 7 years and they leave. And I know when I was talking with Brandon McGee, the same thing happens in Hartford with the housing. It tends to be a lot from New Jersey for some reason, and they come in, but they don't remediate, and I've gone with him, I've visited those apartments, and it's unacceptable, and people can't even go to the state to complain, because then they go and inspect, and they could lose their children, you know, for a certain period of times until we get these private equity funds, which is one of the goals in the legislature, it's going to be hard, but that's what we have to do, and people have to be held accountable, like Josh said.
Thank you. I've been told I'll have to wind up, but I did want to ask each of you to just state what your top priority would be in the upcoming session when you are electing everyone.
So I think it goes across all age groups. I think universal health care has to be a push forever. We live in the greatest country in the world, but our health care is only for some. Healthcare, housing, the same thing. Everybody should be able to live with a house over their roof. I mean, a roof over them. But so housing, healthcare is huge, and I think we have to get back to a climate without giving up our ideals. You know, I know what I believe in, but I have to work with other people. I have to work across the aisle, etc. To get those things done in the legislature, and we got to be able to be willing to do the work. But as you see, there are legislators willing to do that.
Okay, so you said your top priorities would be most of what we've talked about today. Absolutely, I think I look at, whenever we're looking at policy, there's policy we look at that is directly connected to what we work on, and policy we look at that's not as directly connected. But I always try to look at all policy through an equity lens and a community lens. How is this going to impact people, real people first, right? So that's my goal, is to really always look at people first. But obviously, for myself, education's a top priority of mine, especially special education. If you watch, especially national trends, about a month ago, there was an article that said Connecticut spends the most on outplaced special education costs. Outplaced is when we send a student outside of the district to a more private education for specialized needs. Connecticut spends the most in outplaced costs in the entire country. But then if you come here and you go to the legislature and you look at districts, they come in, one of the biggest complaints of the municipality is that they are not getting enough reimbursements for special education. But a lot of that is because our system of funding is really not equitable, and it's actually, we're paying a lot more and getting a lot less for it. So that's a big issue that I know this year, especially as we look at the education funding formula, is going to be key. So that's a big priority of mine this year, is really looking at special education funding and education funding in general.
I know you said one, but I can't just do one. One of the things we were able to do this past year is a pilot program for both the City of Hartford and the City of New Haven, and get free bus passes for high school students. And so it's a pilot program right now, and what we're trying to do is ensure that it's something that happens going forward, because we know that if young people have access to transportation, whether it's to after-school enrichment, sporting events, a job, all those things become easier and limit the barriers they have to access all the opportunities that we're trying to present them each and every day. Another thing is some legislation that was passed a few years ago negatively impacted some of our minority contractors, and efforts are going to happen this year to correct those issues. Like I said, that SIF fund that I keep referring to, there's about $175 million per year that can be accessed, and we want to make sure that our minority contractors are able to avail themselves of those resources in helping to support the different organizations and institutions that write those proposals. The last thing is an issue that Ms. Violette brought to my attention, which is the impact that suspended license has on folks in our community, and trying to mitigate that and address that. And so thank you to her, and to your point earlier, that's how it happens, right? Organizations or individuals coming to us with issues that they see in our community and saying, look, this is an issue, we need to resolve this and solve this, and coming to us, and so we can try to fight that. It got very close last year, and we're hoping to get it over the finish line this year.
I do. Everyone, this booklet here has a wealth of information that is excellent. I just want to say, we have top priority is to make sure that everyone comes out and vote, regardless of party affiliation. We have 14 days of early voting that will be held here in the City of Hartford in my office at 550 Main Street. Starts October 21st through November 3rd. That includes late nights and weekends. Thanks to these folks, I will not see my husband or family for a while. 14 days is a long day. Hartford does not come out to vote. This election will see a high population come out, because everyone thinks it's just a presidential election. It is not just a presidential election. These rules that you guys have placed will follow every other election as well. So it's an excellent, excellent printout. When everyone complains about education, our next election is the Board of Education. The last time we had a Board of Education, only 4% of our population came out to vote. And that affects everyone. So not only this election makes it important, the following election, there's not a year that does not go by that an election does not happen. So please, this is my priority. Make your voice, your choice, and make it loud and clear.
Thank you.
My priority is to reduce the high cost of living. And Connecticut has an issue with the amount of taxes that people pay. We got to do something to reduce the tax burden on the middle class in general. We also have to do something about the high cost of electricity, and we have to do something about the high cost of gas. Gasoline, if it's high, it affects the cost of goods in the grocery store. The cost to transport the goods, it automatically relates to higher prices. If for small businesses, if we have high electricity rates, it means much higher overhead. They have to raise the cost of their goods to make ends meet, to break even, or to realize a small profit. We can do better. America, we used to be a lot more energy independent. And a simple thing is taxing food and taxing clothes. In Massachusetts, people call it Taxachusetts, but they don't tax a lot of their clothing and a lot of their food. We can do a lot better job than that. But to reduce the burden on people in Windsor and in Windsor locks means reducing the high cost of goods and services. We've got to do something about reducing the electricity rates. It's way too high, especially the public benefits portion.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone here who came out and voiced your opinion, and thank you to the audience that came and asked questions. Hope everyone learned something. I have to say, please review the book, read it, and if you think something should be added, that it needs something, let Ms. Red, who knows? Where is it going to get? Chantel, no. Is there a way? How will they know how to get in touch with her?
West Indian Social Club at WISCOH.org.
Okay, WISCOH.org. Okay, the address is on the back. Send feedback to her because they will do one last version in December. Yeah.
Can you say where this is going to be streamed?
This is going to be live streamed on John?
It's on the West Indian Social Club website and the YouTube.
West Indian website, on the West Indian Social Club website and YouTube. And there's snacks in back. So please go partake. And again, thank everyone for being here. And our next step is after the election. We hope to have you guys come back and share with us what you're working on. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. you.